Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to go through 3 nutritional strategies that you can program for fat loss. So whether you're using this with yourself or whether you're using this with the clients, I'm going to go through the pros and cons of the 3 major kind of nutrition strategies that you should be using in order to lose fat most effectively. So when I'm assessing somebody for what nutritional strategy to use, I'm going to look at a couple of different areas, all right? The first thing I'm going to look at is their understanding of nutrition in general. You have to remember that when you work with people, they are not always the most scientifically minded. So when you're throwing out numbers and percentages and grams and things like that, you have to assess the person and their total level of understanding and their level of intelligence and think, am I throwing them in at the deep end here by giving them all of this stuff? If they're highly intelligent, you can probably go with something a little bit more complicated straight off the bat. If they're somebody that's going to take a while to learn and get used to things, you're going to have to go with an approach where a lot of it is done for them and then you kind of teach them how to do it for themselves. Okay, so the first thing that I would look at is someone's actual level of understanding of numbers and data and tracking and then food and macronutrients and kind of general biology before I then decide about what the best nutrition plan is for them. The second thing I'm going to look at is their levels of adherence, okay? I'm going to look at their previous dieting history and their previous nutrition strategies, and I'm going to draw any parallels from there for the thing that I'm thinking about doing. So if they've used something really successfully in the past and maybe they've just not stuck to it after finishing with it or whatever that looks like, then I'm probably going to start there. If they've got zero history of dieting or zero history of kind of doing anything, I'm probably going to start with a really, really structured approach because I don't, again, want to overwhelm them. So you've got to look at their personal level of intelligence. You've also got to look at what their dieting history is like and whether they show high levels of adherence to things or low levels of adherence to things. And then you've also got to look at their goals outside of weight loss too, because you should know by now that weight loss and fat loss is just a kind of function of calories in and calories out. But then depending on what other secondary goals that they've got, you might need to choose a different nutritional strategy that kind of allows them to hit those targets. So for example, you can have someone that wants to lose weight, but they also play football 3 times a week and they want to maximize the performance there. You could have somebody that wants to lose weight, but has a really demanding mental job and needs their food managed for productivity and focus throughout the day. Okay, you could have someone that has particular digestive issues and needs certain foods taken out at certain times of the day so they don't feel discomfort. So all of those secondary goals and those secondary things will factor in to what kind of nutritional strategy that you use. Because remember, you want this to be as simple to implement with as less thought as possible to people that aren't, nutritionally minded. And a lot of clients that you'll get and a lot of normal people do not put nutrition as the forefront of their lives, and that's normal. That's why trainers exist, that's why nutritionists exist. It's kind of your job to fill in those gaps. So when you come to think about what the best nutrition strategy is for someone, you've got to take all of those ideas into account. You can't just throw one at them because you like it. You've got to look at the things that you've got available. You've got to look at the different kind of strategies that you could use and then customize the best one to the client depending on their situation. However, all different strategies aside, it generally comes down to 3 main things, okay? There's generally 3 major strategies that you use when you're planning nutrition. Now, all of these are irrespective of meal timing, kind of meal frequency and all of that stuff, because again, that's specific. All right, but I'm going to go through the 3 major strategies. So the first major strategy is a full meal plan kind of setup. That's where every single piece of food is programmed for every single meal, for every single day. All right, and it's built out, customized for them. Now, the way you would do this is you would write down a list of foods that the person enjoys. If you're programming for yourself, then you'd write down a list of foods that you enjoy. You would write a list of like all the protein sources, all the carbohydrate sources, all the fat sources, and all the meals that you would normally like to eat. And then what you would do is you would, as a coach or as someone setting up for yourself, you would build a customized meal plan based around the foods that they like, enjoy, that meets all the macronutrient targets, okay, that meets the meal frequency needs that they have, all right, and you would literally just follow the plan day to day. Now, this is good for beginners and people that would easily get overwhelmed by using some tracking software like MyFitnessPal, things like that. Again, if you're a trainer or a coach, you may think that's really easy, but you don't think about like how normal people have to access things, okay? And it's not always the easiest thing if you don't understand macronutrients and you don't understand like what foods are high in protein and what foods are high in carbs and things like that, trying to get someone to build this for themselves is very difficult. And if they do that, what they will often do is just fall back on like prepackaged things, or they will just fall back on really simple basic things that they'll eat, and they'll get bored and then they'll fall off the wagon. So for beginners, full meal plans work really well. It also works really well for people that have lots of other things on their plate and don't really care about what they're eating. They just want the result. So CEOs, entrepreneurs, things like that, they shouldn't really be eating different foods in different varieties every day. They should be really of the mindset that you get up, you do the job, you go home. And it's the same with nutrition. You get up, you eat the food, you finish your day. And meal plans for those kind of people is really good because, again, it's done for them. It's taken off their plate. They don't need to think about it. They don't need to think about what to eat and when to eat it. It's all mapped out. It's easy, convenient food that you've helped them plan. So that's when I would look at using an actual structured meal plan. Now, the second thing is I would look at macros, okay? So the second kind of level of that is like, look, these are the macronutrients that you would want. This is when you would want them, ideally. And then you can allow them to like swap in and out foods and plan flexibly around that. So this is a little bit more of a self-customized version of a meal plan. So you would set like, look, this meal I want you to have this amount of protein, this amount of carbs, this amount of fats. This meal I want you to have this amount of protein, this amount of carbs, this amount of fats. Okay, and you would allow them to manipulate their own food choices based on the macros that they needed. Now, this is really good for more intermediate style people that want the benefits of, you know, carbohydrate timing and making sure that they maximize protein frequency, and they want to maximize like energy throughout the day and things like that, but they don't want to be stuck in a rigid meal plan, and they're quite happy to swap things in and out as they choose. So a macro based approach of telling people, right, this is when to eat, this is kind of what to eat, and this is how much, but I'm going to let you pick the sources, is good for like a second level where somebody knows, right, these foods are high in protein, these foods are high in carbs, these foods are, you know, containing the fats and the nutrients and the minerals that they need, and you let them customize their own stuff. It gives them a bit of an autonomy. It allows them a little bit more flexibility, but it still keeps them in those constraints that are going to get them the best results. And the final one that I would normally use with clients, the third kind of the three most popular, would be a calorie plan with protein target. This is a double-edged sword in a way that it gives the most flexibility. So for people that struggle with sticking to diet, struggle with adherence, struggle with changing kind of foods all the time, and people that want lots of variety, it makes the workload easier on you as a coach because you don't need to program lots of meals and things like that. The problem with the calories and protein only approach is that it almost gives people a lot of rope to hang themselves with, as opposed to like it's not a lot of work, but it's a substantial amount of decisions that somebody has to make on a day-to-day basis. So they basically have a lot of room to kind of decide and chop and change and choose, which is great for people that like love food and love cooking and like to have a lot of variety, and maybe, you know, don't mind spending a lot of time on MyFitnessPal. The problem is, because it looks like the simplest approach with the least constraints, people throw this calories and macros idea to people that are complete beginners, and then it becomes a real struggle for them because they don't really know how to put proper meals together that actually will allow them to hit the protein target consistently and stick within the calories consistently. And they'll find that they'll freewheel and track a lot of things and then try and make it up and try and make it work at the end of the day. And I particularly, as I've got further along into my career, it's actually the one that I use the least, where it is the one that you would think would be the most popular because it gives people the most room. I actually use them in this particular order. Most of my clients would be a meal plan, and that would be structured for them. Reason being, I've been writing really good meal plans for in excess of 15 years now. So I'm pretty fucking good at it. And that's the reason why I do it, because that's what people pay me for, because I'm way better at doing it than they are. The second thing I would then do is, if somebody needs a bit more flexibility and they want more swaps, I would either give them like a semi-rigid meal plan where I plan a lot of the meals and then give them meals that they could plan themselves. Or if they wanted more flexibility, I would allow them to plan their own stuff. I would only ever give calories and macros now to someone who's extremely advanced, that I know realistically is going to program very similar to what I would do with their macronutrients anyway. And I just need to manipulate total calories and stuff like that. It's not actually something that I'd ever really use anymore. But it's something that I see a lot of coaches do, and I wanted to give my explanation about why that's not my go-to nutrition strategy, and why actually out of the three, it's probably my least used one, because I find it has the biggest room for error and it actually creates the most work for the client to have to do on their own. So that's the reason why I wouldn't use that as much. So hopefully that gives you an insight into different strategies that you can use to plan nutrition for your clients. And if you've got any questions about how to get started planning nutrition for your clients or any struggles that you've got, drop it in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.